This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to this week's episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Straczynski. On today's show, what the hell is actually going on with Lord Steven Regal, or William Regal? Not sure what we're going by nowadays. Neither does Tony Schiavone if you're watching anything with AEW. But what's going on with him? Where's he going? What's happening? We got a Sasha Banks update. Is CM Punk actually no longer with AEW? Has it been confirmed? We've got the lowdown on all of that. Of course, we got to take a look at what took place with AEW this week. We do have a pay-per-view we have to review as Survivor Series War Games took place last weekend. Thought it was a pretty good show. We're going to delve into that and break that all down, and doing it with me as always. He's the one. He's the only. He is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
World Cup champion podcasters ready to deliver this week, not only in wrestling, soccer, but in the world of podcasting. Can't wait to break it all down. I took in the entirety of Survivor Series War Games. Man, I liked it. I wanted to like it. But me, personally, I'd never liked Raw vs. SmackDown in terms of the traditional Survivor Series style matches. But in terms of incorporating War Games into Survivor Series, I just think you just need to give maybe a pay-per-view like Money in the Bank or something like that, maybe a refresh, and incorporate War Games into something else. Survivor Series, for me, in its truest form, is just 5-on-5 elimination style and keep it moving. I like it. I like the double cage, obviously, being a fan of WCW and World War III. But for me, 5 minutes before every single entrant comes into the ring, it's a long match.
It's a long, it becomes a little bit too much.
A little bit too much for me. I don't think, for me, I can give it an approval in terms of that style of match at that pay-per-view.
So this is what I'll say. I think the Survivor Series pay-per-view has kind of waned. And the way that they've done it has been a little bit wonky and a little bit clunky. I thought this year, introducing War Games into it kind of refreshed Survivor Series a little bit. I know you're talking about refreshing War Games a little bit. I thought this refreshed Survivor Series a little bit, and I thought it made it a little bit more interesting. I don't think the 5-on-5 aspect of Survivor Series is fantastic, but the whole red versus blue brand, there was never really anything that really started it, or if there was, it wasn't very good. There was no real believability. I think when you look at what you've had with the women's 5-on-5 War Game match and incorporating that into Survivor Series, and you look at the men's, I thought they did an okay job with both of those. I think they did a better job with the ladies than they did with the men, because I'll be honest with you, this whole pay-per-view was really just a catalyst to move the Bloodline storyline along. And you had matches to kind of fill out the card is basically what this was. Because even in the match for the Bloodline versus the Brawling Brutes and everybody else, it was really all centered around the Bloodline and what was taking place with that story. And look, I think it was a very good pay-per-view to help move that storyline along, because I think we really pushed it forward, and I thought it was well done. But let's jump into a quick review and get to the results of what took place in this pay-per-view. Team Belair defeated Team Damage Control via pinfall. We're going to have a conversation about Damage Control and kind of where they're at right now, because there was some stuff that unfolded on Friday night that just has me scratching my head a little bit. Maybe Doc can help clear up a couple of things for me. AJ Styles defeated Finn Balor via pinfall. Ronda Rousey defeated Shotzi via submission to retain her title. This was arguably, actually there's no argument, this was the worst match on this card. It was 7 minutes. Halfway through the match, the crowd had turned on it. And Ronda Rousey basically no-sold Shotzi's offense. It was not good, not well done. Not sure what the hell the issue is with Ronda Rousey. It's just not clicking. Austin Theory surprisingly defeated Seth Rollins and Bobby Lashley to win the title. I thought the way this finished, with Rollins having Theory up and getting ready to do a Falcon Arrow, Ashley ends up spearing him, You have Austin Theory landing on top of Seth Rollins for the 1-2-3. He gets the title. I thought this was a nice way to kind of shift this and move this storyline along. Again, Austin Theory, a guy who we talked about multiple times, multiple weeks in a row, about them actually crushing him, comes back, and now he's your U.S. champion. So real interesting to see kind of how they build him up from here. And now the main event, the Bloodline defeating the Brawling Brutes, Drew McIntyre, Kevin Owens. I thought this was an absolutely fantastic match. You're right. The amount of time it takes from one guy to get to the ring to the other guy, it just takes a while, and it's long, and it just kind of drags at certain points. But once everybody's in the ring, this match specifically was fantastic. We got kind of what we've been waiting for. You had Kevin Owens have Roman Reigns in a spot of vulnerability. He ends up stunning him, gets him rolled over, and then you have 1-2, and then all of a sudden you look, and Sami Zayn is holding the arm of the referee back. Next thing you know, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens are having a discussion. You've got Jimmy Uso coming in for a super kick. Kevin Owens grabs it. Sami Zayn goes down and low blows Kevin Owens, then looks at Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns gives him the nod of approval, and Sami Zayn actually does it. Turns on Kevin Owens with a haluva kick to lay him out for Jey Uso to then hit a splash and get the win for the Bloodline, thus solidifying he is part of the Bloodline. And that is basically what kicked off Monday Night Raw and where we were at on Friday Night SmackDown. Sami Zayn now officially a part of the Bloodline, indoctrinated by all members. I thought this was absolutely fantastic. This to me was the highlight of this pay-per-view. I thought this match specifically was really good. What was your reaction to basically the main event and how it all played out?
Yeah, it was good. It finished the story, which is the theme was based on the start of the pay-per-view, what's going on with Sami Zayn. And so they had the premise, he has the meeting with Roman Reigns, and they decide, okay, let's answer it. And they teased it, and maybe it could have gone a couple different ways, but in the end, Sami Zayn solidifies his allegiance with the Bloodline. And I think it also tied up a story, which is, does Jey Uso trust Sami Zayn? And now the answer is absolutely a resounding yes. And that's fine. We all wanted a different question answered, which was, can finally the Bloodline get pissed at Sami Zayn and kick his ass out? But that's just us being negative, being bloodthirsty. It was a great way to answer the question in that manner. And obviously with the Brutes winning on Friday, the night before, it lent to kind of planting the seed of doubt. But when it all came down, it was a great match. And you finally now know the Bloodline at its very moment right now is solidified and at the top of the WWE.
Absolutely. With calling the card, we ended up splitting the point. The big difference was I took AJ Styles over Finn Balor, and you took the Bloodline over Team Brawling Brutes. And that was really the only spot where we differed, and we kind of countered each other. So at this moment in time, I have a 7-point lead, 15-8. We're going to end up washing all of this when WrestleMania comes around. So very shortly, we'll be getting rid of all of this. But this all sets up and leads us into Monday. And I think coming out of this pay-per-view and jumping into Monday, you had a couple of things where you could really kick the show off and you could really get going. And look, they kicked the show off on Saturday night with the pay-per-view with the ladies. And they did the same thing here on Monday night. And I say that the women's division has needed and has missed a babyface Becky Lynch. What we got from Becky Lynch opening Monday Night Raw was absolutely fantastic. Becky Lynch is such a natural. She's such a natural talent. It's unreal. And she's so good at honestly everything, whether it's in the ring, whether it's on the microphone, whether it's interacting with fans. She's just so comfortable and she's flawless. And what you ended up getting was Becky cutting a promo, ends up in the crowd talking to regular people. We're going to say they're regular people. Talking to regular people. One guy was heavily inebriated. At least it seemed like that anyways. And she's just having a conversation with him while she's cutting a promo. Out comes Bayley, who interrupts her promo. Becky's cutting a promo on Bayley. Bayley's cutting a promo on Becky and the fans. The fans and Becky start cutting a promo on Bayley. Mind you, Becky's standing with all of the fans. Next thing you know, she gets jumped by Damage Control. And I think this is maybe where we kind of take the Damage Control story, because Becky gets jumped by Damage Control and they end up brawling out into the concourse, and Becky beats up Damage Control. It's 3-on-1. You fast forward to Friday, and Damage Control is out there cutting a promo. Liv Morgan comes out with her new get up, and look, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm an absolute fan of Liv Morgan's new get up. I think her whole, it's kind of this Rhea Ripley, Harley Quinn / I want more violence vibe. I think it's great. Whatever her new gimmick is, I think it's great. She comes out to address Damage Control, and she sits there. She's like, so there's what, 1, 2, 3 of you, one of me. She's like, odds seem fair. And she runs into the ring, and she starts laying waste to Damage Control. Numbers end up taking her over, only for Tegan Nox to come back, which I think is fantastic. And I'll give you a little side story after we have this conversation about Damage Control. Tegan Nox ends up coming back to help stave off Damage Control and help save Liv Morgan. Again, 2-on-1. Damage Control, to me, seems completely broken. There is zero steam. Mind you, these two women, 2 of the 3 women, are your tag team champs, and yet they were just dominated by one person in Becky Lynch. They were dominated by, I think we would both agree, Liv Morgan, even though she was a champion, she's really a mid-card female on this roster. She did a pretty good job handling them until the numbers overtook her. And then Tegan Nox, somebody who, I'll be honest with you, I don't think the majority of the WWE universe is familiar with, comes because last time I seen her, she was in NXT. She was called up, I think, for one day, and then they ended up letting her go. I might be getting her confused with Chelsea Green because Chelsea Green had the same situation. But either way, you end up basically breaking up this fight in any steam that this group had. They just continued to just run into a wall. I don't think Damage Control is working at all. I think Becky Lynch was needed for the women's division. I think her as a babyface helps elevate everything. And I think this new Liv Morgan character is fantastic. I know there's a whole lot there that I'm dumping on your plate, but just to kind of quickly break it down, how broken is Damage Control? What do you make of a new babyface Becky Lynch, and how missed was she? And what do you think of the new Liv Morgan?
Yeah, I think it's great that Damage Control is great for a faction, maybe to reintroduce Bayley, but Bayley's a star. She doesn't need a faction. So what's the best way is for her to turn and then go through them and then work her way up to Bianca Belair again and work her way maybe back into feuds that she's been to, because you need something creative for Bayley. It's been good, but it doesn't seem to me that Damage Control is going to become anywhere near like the 4 horsewomen were. So you just move on. You establish what Bayley is, which is a narcissist. And what do? They try to manipulate people, but in the end, the people that are getting manipulated have to move on. So I believe that Bayley needs to reestablish herself as one of the top stars. Liv Morgan, for me, just not on my radar. For me, I would rather see the likes of Bianca Belair, the likes of Alexa Bliss, Natalya when she comes back from her broken nose, other females in the division. For me, I'm not a fan of that rock star gimmicky thing that they've done with her. Her title reign did nothing to launch her, in my mind, to put her at the front of my attention. Now, she's great. She's got, that spunky attitude that resonates with a lot of fans. Just not me. I don't care. I just think that she's fodder for others. I think that other characters like Nikki Cross quickly, with proper storytelling, could move ahead of her. But we'll see what they do with her. She's in desperate need of getting with creative and saying, hey, give me something that resonates, something that is impactful. It might be this. We'll see. But it hasn't resonated with me. Now, Becky Lynch, great. I think that this attire is way better than the Seth Rollins-esque fruity outfits that just started getting bigger and weirder at the end of the Man. It took a turn that it didn't need to go. It went more sports entertainer Liberace style. I don't need that. You got one. I'll say this. I never wanted to die laughing, but what Seth Rollins wore on Monday was a violation.
Bro,
that was horrible. I was well, first of all, I know what you're going to say, but let me give you my reaction. He comes out, and I'm like, what the fuck is he wearing? That is an outfit that is for a certain style of club that you or I will never step foot in. I looked at that and was like, did he walk by anybody and say, look, we're a PG program here? That outfit was... what do you call it? Androgynous, to say the least. I was not down with that. And it just reminded me, I was like, what? Now he's going to take over Becky's style and just start wearing these ultra flamboyant gear? I like his style, but Monday Night style for Seth Rollins, major thumbs down.
Dude, I was watching that, and I turned to Alyssa, and I was like, you know what he has on? I've seen girls on Instagram wearing.
Yes. Right, exactly. I was like, what? It took away from anything that he said. It was just like, no. I think he wants to push the boundaries of shit like that. But that, out of
almost like Goldust used to back when we were kids.
Yes, out of 10 outfits, that was the worst one of the bunch. But listen, it's Seth Rollins. It's great to see what he's always involved in. But with the ladies, Becky Lynch has to kind of establish herself again as well. And it was great. Monday was funny. It was unique. And it set the tone for what was a decent Monday Night Raw.
Now, basically spinning off of what took place on Saturday night, Monday night, Kevin Owens ends up challenging, I believe he challenged Sami Zayn, but Jey Uso stepped up and said, no, I'll fight this. I got this. You're my boy. And Kevin Owens ends up beating Jey Uso. And there's more here because the report is you're going to have Kevin Owens at some point facing Roman Reigns for the title. And then at some point you're going to have Sami Zayn facing Roman Reigns for the title. And then at another point you're going to have Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn facing the Usos for the Undisputed Tag Team Championships. So these two are going to come together. These are all the reports. This is how booking is kind of going right now. Originally, they had Sheamus penciled into the Kevin Owens spot, but Kevin Owens is here now, and they're going to try to move forward with Kevin Owens. So the next big match for Roman Reigns will be Kevin Owens. I want to know how you would book Kevin Owens going forward, because I like how Jay stepped up to fight Sammy's battle here. What I would do is I would have Kevin Owens work his way through the entire bloodline, with Sami Zayn being the last guy that he has to get by to get to Roman Reigns, where then he can then fight Roman Reigns and they can have another classic. How would you book Kevin Owens kind of going forward here?
Yeah, badass. I think that he needs to be somebody that can at some point stand across from Roman Reigns, where there's a lot more belief that he could be the title holder. And that's what it has to end up being. He's got to make his ascent. Now, does anybody truly believe that he'll be the guy that takes the belt off of Roman? No. That's what sucks, is that it would shock a lot of people to do it, but he's not yet at that star level. He's a badass, but it stinks because it just kind of feels like he's going to climb his way back after all these years, stand across from Roman Reigns, only to take the L. But at least we'll have the opportunity to see where it takes him. His promos have... Look, this is what's great about WWE, is you get the first version of a character, their first run, and what a run it was for Kevin Owens, culminating in a title run. Then you kind of take a step back. You start doing some entertaining stuff with Chris Jericho. You go into that, hey, let's get yourself over a little bit more, and then maybe some time away, and then you come back, and you climb up that mountain again. And there's only really a handful of people that can climb down the mountain and climb back up the mountain and have a certain level of success, and Kevin Owens is one of them. When he comes out, the crowd loves it. He's got that it factor that people want. So it won't hurt him, potentially, to keep climbing up and down the mountain, but he's got to do a better job of, on his way up the mountain, to get to that zenith, is what you say. Get to that Chris Jericho level. Feel like he's at his own defined level of, okay, he's really over, really popular, but not yet at that zenith where every time Chris Jericho stood in that ring against The Rock, against Randy Orton, against Triple H, you felt at some point that he had a legitimate shot of winning. Whereas right now it's clear there's one big dog and a bunch of little dogs, and those little dogs got to put on some muscle, eat the chow, and get themselves in shape so that when they stand across in a pit bull of a fight, that they can appear to be ready. And you're absolutely right. Go through the bloodline, feud, maybe do something to put Sami Zayn on the shelf for a minute, or do something that's going to stand out. But man, Kevin Owens, what a character, and what an asset to WWE.
Yeah, most definitely. He, like you said, he is a guy who every time he shows up, crowd pops. Every time he's there, you feel like it's going to be something big. So Kevin Owens, absolutely fantastic. Something that I was less than impressed with, Lacey Evans.
Oh.
On SmackDown, where we got introduced to yet another modified repackage of Lacey Evans. This feels like it is repackage number 36 for Lacey Evans. This time she was working out at a Department of Justice or the Marine Corps, and she was getting back in shape because she has fallen so far down the card. The only way for her to reset is to go back to who she really is. Why does it not work with Lacey Evans? And more specifically, why do they keep trying to give us this Marine character that it just, I think it falls flat. I'll be honest with you, when I was watching this, the moment it popped up, I was like, what? Like out loud, I was like, what? Even my girlfriend was like, what are they doing? And then I said to her, I was like, you know who I feel really bad for? It's not even Lacey Evans. I feel bad for all of the military personnel. I was like, they are using a military base and they are using military garb to help get this person over. And it just seems so disrespectful to me. I was like, this doesn't, I don't like any of this. This doesn't do it for me. Why does Lacey Evans keep falling flat? And why do they keep reintroducing this similar character that just doesn't go anywhere? Like, were you interested in that Lacey Evans bit at all?
No, and that's what my note said. Again, it just feels like they can't find the right one. And it's weird because they're trying. How many characters do you get to where you just say, you know what? Just might be time to go to NXT. She is in desperate need of a long run, maybe in NXT, get herself back, get herself over. Like this,
dude, I love the way you think because that was my thought. Why bring her to the main roster? Send her back to NXT, hit the reset button there.
And here's what I think you and I can concretely agree on. WWE is not the testing ground for characters. That is the spot where the polished character comes in, ready to go. You should never, on SmackDown or on Raw, especially when you have NXT, you should never, ever test out characters. Like, for example, with Elias and his younger brother, per se. The younger brother should have tried out in NXT. Is it over? Obviously, it's not because he's gone already. So you test out shit in NXT. It's a testing ground. Character testing, NXT. Or for someone that is really good like a Mandy Rose to respark their career. Raw and SmackDown is the main event. Come in, debut, get over, or stay down. You don't get to go away, come back. I mean, thankfully they went away from the whole trauma thing because that was depressing, and I think it resonated with nobody. It's just another failed situation. They're trying, which is obviously respectful. Somebody's got her ear. So she's got somebody's ear in the company, but it's not working.
Yeah, I just don't get it, and it really feels like every time they try to bring her back, it is something very similar. It's always cut from the same cloth. If it didn't work before, and it didn't work the time before that, and it didn't work the time before that, and it hasn't worked the previous 6 times, why do you keep giving it to us this way? Give us something new. Hopefully it clicks, and hopefully it works. If not, I think you're right. Send her back to NXT. That's what my initial thoughts were. Send her back to NXT. Was there anything else from WWE that you wanted to get into before we jump into AEW this week?
It was cute to see Emma kind of get at it with her boyfriend a little bit, giving her support, but she took the L. It stunk. I like the Brutes are doing their thing. It was nice to see kind of a little bit of Kofi Kingston back in the mix, although he took a major L. I thought his work on SmackDown was pretty funny in regards to trying to stand up to Gunther, but it had no chance. The World Cup was fun. Obviously, it sets up what I like.
Were you surprised by Ricochet winning that?
No, I thought it was perfect. If you're going to have an opportunity for somebody to get an opportunity again, it's Ricochet, and that's the best character. So once the draw came out, I was like, oh yeah, it's going to be Ricochet. So I thought it was great. I thought SmackDown was pretty good. It went by really fast. It had a lot of fun aspects to it. Raw kind of was okay. Obviously, seeing The Miz and Dexter Lumis kind of handling their business and finishing off what they've got going on. So it was a good week for WWE. Now you got to kick it off, but it really did seem like it was the Bloodline and a bunch of everything else.
Yeah, it really did feel like that. Again, I thought SmackDown was good, but you're right. Your assessment is pretty accurate there. Let's jump into AEW because I thought Rampage was just another one of those Rampage shows. Not a whole lot there. But I thought what we got with Dynamite, I thought Dynamite was really, really good. And I think specifically there's a lot to unpack with what took place with MJF. But before we got to MJF, we had Hangman Page make a return from his concussion, and he instantly jumps into a feud with Jon Moxley. I wanted to know what you thought about this because I'll be honest with you. When Jon Moxley came out, I thought he was still looking for a little retribution for what took place at Full Gear. I thought he was looking to maybe address some things with MJF. Thought maybe he was looking to address a few things with William Regal. I thought we were looking to kind of wrap that situation up and put a bow on it. Instead, he comes out, cuts kind of a generic Jon Moxley promo, talking about how there will be three things that are constant, and that's death, taxes, and Jon Moxley willing to fight somebody. And then Hangman Page's music hits. And Hangman Page comes to the ring, and I think the best part of the whole thing leading up to them having this soft brawl, I'm going to call it a soft brawl, was Jon Moxley being like, "Are you sure you really want to do this?" As he taps his head, "Don't you remember what happened last time?" I thought that was absolutely fantastic. Again, this is what I love about AEW. They don't really shy away from anything. If it took place on screen, we're going to talk about it. We're going to discuss it. Was it not the best thing for Hangman Page to get laid out and have a really bad concussion? Yeah, it wasn't the best thing. But are we going to work it into a storyline? Hell yeah, we are. I thought that was an absolutely fantastic way to do that. Hangman basically punches Jon Moxley and they brawl all over the place. Moxley's so fired up, goes to get at Hangman, who's up on a ramp, completely misses the ramp and wipes out. But I think it works because it's Jon Moxley. He's that loose cannon. And yeah, he's so fired up. All he's focused on is getting to Hangman Page. He doesn't care about a ramp. I thought it was great. And in the end, they ended up saying that he was sent home because they were feuding all over the place, which then leads to what takes place with MJF, which we'll get to in a minute. But what did you think of the Hangman return? What do you think about him instantly jumping into a feud with Jon Moxley? And what do you think this says about Jon Moxley's storylines? Because I feel like Jon Moxley still has loose ends.
Yeah, it's good. It's that, okay, here's what happened. Obviously, there was a match that culminated in a injury, a significant concussion, and Adam Hangman Page. It was great the way they set it up, where Moxley says, even though I lost the title, bam, I'm the guy. Nobody can hang with me. Nobody can step foot in this ring with the same level of, vitriol and anger and willingness to brawl and go to the depths of hell. Well, who is? The guy that he put out, which was Adam Hangman Page, which is great. Just a story of, you put me down, now I need my revenge. Basic storytelling, very good, but intriguing. You want to see it. So it just continues, which is a perfect, when Hangman's music hit, I said, okay, that's a perfect next feud for Moxley. I love it.
Yeah, I think it'll be a really good feud. Again, my big issue with it is I just feel like we have loose ends that haven't been tied up. And that kind of leads us to what took place with MJF. MJF shows up, makes an appearance, and cuts a 17-minute promo and lays out a whole bunch of stuff in this 17-minute promo, and there's a lot to really get into with what took place. And I'd like to break it down like piece by piece with you. First things first, let's jump into the actual promo itself. In the promo, he's cutting, again, it seems almost rambling. Like it has a direction, but it's kind of going all over the place. So much so that you tweeted him and basically said, this isn't your best work. And as he's going through this promo, it basically lays out who his next three challengers will most likely be. Basically tells everybody the story about him and William Regal and how basically 3 weeks prior to him winning the belt at Full Gear, William Regal approached him about making him the baddest heel in the industry. And they end up kind of going on and on and on and on. And in the end, he goes behind William Regal. He brings out the brass knucks that William Regal gave him at Full Gear, goes behind William Regal, and he's basically telling the crowd, like, let's give it up for William Regal. Like, he's the guy. And next thing you know, he clubs him in the back of the head, knocking him out. And basically then reads the email that William Regal sent to him when he was like 18, 19 years old, and basically telling him, when you got the goods, come back and see me. I thought that was pretty good, right? But it, again, left me scratching my head. I'm like, there are so many loose ends here. What are we doing? What did you think of this promo? And what do you think about how this kind of helps push some of what he was talking about? To me, I just felt like it was really meandering. It was just kind of all over the place. Like, we could spend a whole hour really going bit by bit, breaking this promo down because there was so much crammed into it. And at times, it just kind of felt like we were just kind of walking around in a circle.
Yeah, it was just too long. It obviously he played the heel role. Obviously everything that went down in regards to the culmination of that promo, fine. I hated the belt. I hated everything that went with it. Obviously
We got to get into the belt.
Yeah, when you're MJF, you set the bar high, and he's just a victim of his own high standards. His promos deliver, they're scathing, they're quality, they tie things together. This one was just kind of like, I'm the baddest motherfucker here, too bad for all of you, and this is what it's about, and this is me showing off my belt. It is, again, when you look at his promo, I get what he's doing, planting the seed of saying, hey, I'm the highest and baddest dude in the market. I want to be signed by the big dogs, bringing up another company. That is fine. It doesn't lend to me that he's ever going to do that and ever go to WWE. So it's great because he's going to leverage a deal.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. He said the one real con, Nick, and his buddy Trips.
Yeah.
I totally forgot that he even mentioned WWE
It's great. I get it, but I never will ever see him going there because he'll just be a small fish in that huge pond. But in my mind, I just think that you got to take now the next step, and you can't have promos that linger and go on like that. I just didn't like it. I just thought it was not his best work, and it was disappointing that it didn't happen last week, obviously being on a movie set, but you got to do better. You got to step it up. It's got to be succinct. It's got to be passion. You got to have a lot of passion behind it, and it just has to deliver at a higher level. And it can't ramble and go on and on and on like that. So it was a C- promo from a performer that we expect A+ from.
Yeah, and you mentioned the belt and how you didn't like the belt. So basically, he has a Burberry belt. He took the AEW Championship and he made a Burberry leather strap for it, and that's the new belt. You absolutely hate this. Why do you hate this so much?
It's ugly because the first one's great. You have a quality belt. What would you how do you come and say that? Obviously, it's pissing people off. That was the intention. How do you ruin such a great belt that's black, pure diamond, and make this okay, fine. You know, it would have been funny if you would have did like a wing-tipped AEW belt. That would have kind of been like a funny-ass rub for everybody talking about a different belt maybe changing. You know, it would have been funny as fuck. But to just make it Burberry, it was ugly. It looks good on a scarf. It looks like shit on a belt.
Yeah, I think it looks weird, but I think it works for his character. I don't have as many problems with it as you do. I don't necessarily like it because I do think the AEW Championship is fantastic. I think it is arguably the best belt that we have in wrestling right now. So him modifying it, I think, like you said, it's just to get a rise out of people. It's just to piss people off. But it is not a good looking belt. Like it looks weird, but I think it's cool that he did that because again, this is MJF. This is his character. It's what it is. Now, the big thing is William Regal. Again, I feel like we have a storyline with open ends with Jon Moxley still that haven't been addressed. William Regal in this whole promo basically introduces MJF, and then he sits there and he's quiet the entire time, doesn't say anything. He's just there. He's just present, and he looks miserable. Like he looks like he would rather be anywhere else. Like he'd rather be in the room while his mom is giving his dad a blowjob, watching that. He looks like he is so uncomfortable where he's at that anything would be better than being in the ring. And I don't know why he looks like that. I think we maybe have a little bit of insight when we get to our news and notes segment. But he looks like he just doesn't want to be there, doesn't want to be doing this. And to me, with this, William Regal is the centerpiece in this whole entire MJF storyline. And what it feels like is you just wrote him out of action and you help set up a feud with Bryan Danielson, because Bryan Danielson comes down to the ring after William Regal gets clubbed in the back of the head. He's spitting up blood. They stretcher him out. Danielson comes down with one boot on, like he was in the back and he was changing when all this took place. And he comes running down and he's like half dressed basically. And of course, William Regal's like his father figure. So he still has love and compassion for this man, which again makes the situation with Jon Moxley weird. These guys are part of the same group. Jon Moxley wants to know why you turned on me. We never really got the answer there. If the promo that MJF gave us is because he wants to make MJF the baddest heel in the business, I just feel like that's a stupid answer. I don't feel like that makes any sense. And Regal's now laid out. He's no longer with MJF. To me, it feels like this storyline has hit fast forward and you just mashed it down. Like you didn't move the storyline. This was supposed to be like a 3 to 6 month storyline, and you basically turned it into a 3-week storyline. And it feels like there's a lot of chunks missing. It feels like there's just like really bad editing in a movie done here. What's your reaction to William Regal's position in all of this, to him being in all of it? And again, he's the linchpin. He's what ties Jon Moxley, MJF together, and he's what ties Bryan Danielson together, which is the next feud. So you have these two bookend feuds surrounding MJF, and this is the guy that kind of pulls it all together. And it just feels like we haven't had a chance for any of this to breathe.
And it goes right to the top. How the F is Tony Khan not going to lock up a talent like William Regal for multiple years?
Save it for the end.
Yes.
Well, we'll talk more about that at the end.
Yes.
Save it.
Exactly. It's poor planning. How do you not? And I think as a company, and this is what Jim Cornette rails AEW about weekly on his very popular wrestling podcast and YouTube show. When you're a company, you have to think 6 months, a year, 2 years in advance. And for AEW, it seemed like they had a great idea. They planned it out with this culmination, but then maybe didn't take the next step and have the advanced planning for what happens once the payoff hits.
Yep.
So it's very disappointing because I think it would have been a great run to have MJF and William Regal go through the AEW roster. It would have been fun. But in the end, the way in which it went down on Dynamite, the bottom line, which is, and it kind of really ties into this whole podcast this week, we wanted a different payoff, which is a manager leading a young gun into the next zenith of his career. Just like with Sami Zayn, we wanted the bloodline to get and realize Sami Zayn's not an Uso and kick his ass out. What we got is the true definition of who's the devil, and that's MJF. That's where this will kick off into, but in the end, we can definitely nitpick and complain about the use of William Regal, but what he did was aid in the rocket ship of MJF winning the title. That's all. And you kind of segue into the next feud that he has, and you at least unite a group to see what they had. You kicked off Wheeler Yuta in the Blackpool Combat Club. You have an introduction of a few new wrestlers that at least if whatever time frame William Regal's there, that he imparted something to a roster. It's kind of like a consultant that you say, hey, we bring him in, or for NFL fans, it's kind of like a veteran that you sign to a one-year deal that you say, okay, it's at the end of his career, but you bring in a guy that can just, even for that year, say, hey, this is what it was like in WrestleMania. This is what it was like in the feud. This is what you have to do. Just even if MJF spends 2 hours with Regal talking the business, it imparts knowledge. So in the end, for the greater good of professional wrestling, Regal's stint will be fine. But for our creative juices and for the here and now moment, we feel left unsatisfied. And that is never a good feeling in the present in the world of wrestling.
Yeah, and I think you're right. We almost feel like we got gypped. And it's frustrating because you do lean on AEW for your long-term storylines. Like WWE is doing a really good job of working all of that back in. But AEW is a place where you went for long-term storylines, and especially with a guy like MJF, who there's so much meat on the bone, there's so much potential there. It really feels almost like we're getting gypped, and this does look like this sets up for his next feud, and it will be Bryan Danielson. At some point, he will take on Eddie Kingston. So there are things that are set up, and it was a 17-minute promo that just kind of went on and on and on, but he did lay a couple of things out. So there was a little bit of direction to it. I just don't think we really liked the direction. I feel like we were a little bit frustrated by it. All that being said, thought Dynamite was a really good show. What was your show of the week? Because for me, it comes down to Dynamite and it comes down to SmackDown, and I'm going to say it's razor thin.
Yeah, very
What was your
razor
show
thin.
of the week?
Very razor thin. I just thought overall, in regards to what everything that needed to be done, you had the culmination of a match in which the Elite got their first victory in the main event. Good match. So I'm going to give it to Dynamite just on the strength of, at least we got to see Kenny Omega give his delivering line once again. So I'm giving it just by a razor thin margin to Dynamite.
And the thing about that match was you really got to see a little bit of infighting with Death Triangle. trying to figure out who's going to turn heel, who's willing to use what weapons to win matches. And again, it's what kind of cost them in that match as the Elite ends up getting the victory. So there's a lot of good storytelling with Dynamite. I'll second you. I'll go with Dynamite. Again, very razor thin. SmackDown was a very good show. If I had to pick one, I'd go Dynamite, SmackDown number 2. But again, very, very close. You ready for some news and notes?
Hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What made your list?
So WWE fans have been waiting for what feels like forever. You even had the crowd chanting for Sasha Banks during the Ronda Rousey and Shotzi match at Survivor Series War Games this past weekend. So we've got a bit of a Sasha Banks update for you. According to Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio, he said that Sasha Banks and WWE are in contract talks. And the last he heard, which was a long time ago, was that it was a money situation. Banks posted a TikTok that caused a stir as she used AEW and WWE with their hashtags, seeming to tease her in-ring return. It was a picture of her working out with Juventud Guerrero. Sasha Banks now hasn't appeared for WWE since walking out on the May 16th episode of Raw with Naomi. It was reported in August that Banks and Naomi had agreed in principle to make their return. However, neither have appeared to put pen to paper. We do have some injury news coming from both AEW and WWE. Finally, we're getting some reports on Randy Orton, and it doesn't sound good. It sounds like Randy has had spinal fusion surgery to take care of a back injury. It's believed that this was the last resort to help him with his pain and his issues he was having. Due to this surgery, it's unknown when Randy Orton will be back. During War Games, there was an unplanned spot between Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns, which may have led to a burst eardrum for Roman Reigns. At least that was the initial thought. Since it's been debunked. It was not a burst eardrum, but Roman Reigns has a little bit of bruising on his face, and his ear really hurts. But after the match, Roman was incredibly angry and let everyone know backstage. Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns have discussed the issue, and it was reported that they are on good standings. But Roman, like I said, has a bruised face, and he's got a bad ear. You can go back and you can watch War Games, and there was a spot where the two were lined up across from each other, and Kevin Owens smacked the shit out of Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns looked a little surprised, and you could see him kind of opening and closing his jaw, trying to kind of get his bearings back. It shocked him, surprised him. He was not ready for it, and it appears to have hurt him. So he went the rest of the match with a pretty banged-up ear. On the AEW front, Andrade has had surgery to repair a torn pec muscle. This will have him sidelined for about 8 months. We have another former WWE star that is confirmed to be returning to WWE. PW Insider is reporting that former Impact champion is confirmed to be returning to WWE. According to the report, former WWE star Eric Young will be returning to the company on Impact Wrestling this week. Eric Young was written off the show in a dramatic fashion in a vignette that was reportedly filmed in secret and aired on this week's broadcast, where Diener appears to murder Young by stabbing him. Eric Young was previously in WWE as a member of Sanity alongside Big Damo and Alex Tischer. When they were in WWE, they went by Killian Dane and Alex Wolf, as well as Nikki Cross. So, a lot of stuff that came out with MJF, and this is kind of where everything leads back to William Regal. So, is CM Punk no longer with AEW, and has that been confirmed? Not really sure. During an appearance on Renee Paquette's podcast, The Sessions, Stokely Hathaway, the manager of the AEW faction, The Firm, so help explain some of the BS that's happened with The Firm lately. Everything was supposed to happen with The Firm did not happen. Back it all out, what happened immediately after the pay-per-view was a huge part of it. The person we were supposed to directly feud with is no longer in the company. So is that confirming CM Punk is no longer in the company? Not 100% sure. He's still under contract, so very, very weird. That was the one thing I was looking forward to because I was hand-chosen for that role. I'm just going to say it. I don't know the specifics about people choosing sides. I just know that what CM Punk said. He said, hey, I want to work with this guy. That means a lot, regardless of what happened. So this is very interesting because no one from AEW has explicitly said CM Punk is done. It has only been inferred that he is no longer with the company. So that kind of explains some of this herky-jerkiness with the MJF run initially, which then brings us to what took place on Wednesday night's Dynamite. And a lot of speculation surrounding William Regal and his contract situation. Dave Meltzer earlier this week said it was a year-long contract expiring around April. That was quickly corrected to a 3-year deal. Since then, we've got a reported update that this no longer appears to be the case, with Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful reporting that Regal's deal is set to expire in December. The expectation is Regal will go back to WWE and will be the right hand for Triple H, just like in the NXT days. So what we got on Wednesday was basically William Regal being written off of TV. That'll probably be the last time you see William Regal on AEW television, which goes back to what you were saying, John. How do you not lock a guy up of that caliber for multiple years? How do you do what would appear to be roughly an 8-month contract, or give an opt-out to allow this guy, who he's like a brain trust. He is Triple H's right-hand dude. How do you just, here we go, this is what we'll do for you? I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know what you do from there. I don't know how you handle the situation with William Regal. I don't know why you allow it to basically be that way. Really, really interesting. We'll see what happens with AEW. We'll see what happens with WWE as far as William Regal is concerned. But that's going to do it for this week's Wrestling News and Notes.
Man, good shit. Lots of interesting storylines to look at in the coming weeks. AEW, WWE. The ratings for AEW, they're not really trending upward. They're kind of plateauing. So it's something to pay attention to in regards to, you just may need to bring CM Punk back just for business. Even if you hate it, even if you have to set strict parameters, even if you have to say one and done, if you make a mistake, you gotta spark it. And for me, while the shows are okay, you just have a feeling that AEW is not hitting on all cylinders, and you never want to feel that way as a company. So a delicate spot for an interesting company that's making its way now from year 3 to year 4. So we'll see how it progresses. AEW, WWE, ending the year very strong, but they could also do a lot better in regards to their character development. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. If you've agreed or disagreed with any of our takes regarding the angles, character development, if you absolutely love Lacey Evans or Liv Morgan, hit us up. Let us know at Detroit Podcast. Love the banter with all the supporters and listeners in a great wrestling community. Anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast, all you got to do is type in 3 words, Detroit Sports Podcast, and our content will find you. Daily content breaking down wrestling, WWE, AEW, the Lions, Pistons, Tigers, anything in the world of Detroit sports and professional wrestling, you can find it at Detroit Podcast. Can't wait to break it all down next week on the latest edition of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast.